It was a dark and stormy night at the Fontainebleau Hotel in Miami. The air was thick with the scent of cigarettes and the pungent aroma of rum-soaked tourists stumbling about the lobby. The faint smell of cigar smoke wafted through the air as Santo Trafficante settled into a plush armchair in the dimly lit hotel room. From his vantage point on the upper floor, he gazed out over the glittering Miami skyline, the lights of the city reflecting in his eyes like a million tiny stars. He had chosen the room with care, ensuring that it was far enough away from the prying eyes of the outside world. The air in the hotel room grew dense as a figure emerged from the shadows, his face obscured by the dim light. A sense of anticipation hung heavy in the air as the man approached Santo Trafficante, the infamous mob boss known to few but feared by many. It was a pivotal moment in history, as two unlikely forces, the underworld of organized crime and the world's most renowned intelligence agency, collided for a common goal. What would transpire between them would shape the course of history, leaving a trail of mystery and conspiracy that would haunt the world for decades to come. Havana, 1950s and 60s. In the 50s and 60s, Havana was a city of contrasts. The grandeur of the casinos, nightclubs, and hotels stood in stark contrast to the poverty and oppression of the working-class neighborhoods. As the sun set over Havana, the city came alive with the sounds of jazz music and the clinking of glasses in the bustling bars and casinos. Among the wealthy and influential patrons was Santo Trafficante Jr., a man known for his legitimate business ventures, the sparkling legal casinos, and the only drive-in movie theater in the city. But whispers circulated through corners of the city, rumors of an underworld syndicate with its fingers in the illicit dealings of Cuban hotels and casinos. And some said that Trafficante was at the helm of it all, a man of mystery and power, a king in a city of corruption. Trafficante inherited his father's criminal empire and interests in Cuba, where he ran several casinos and came into contact with powerful figures like Cuban president of the time, Batista, and notorious underworld figure Meyer Lansky. He operated openly during Batista's regime, overseeing establishments like the Sans Souci Cabaret and Casino International. But there was a stain on his reputation. As November 1957 dawned, Trafficante and over 60 other notorious mobsters gathered at the Appalachian meeting in New York. Despite facing fines up to $10,000 and prison sentences ranging from 3 to 5 years, their convictions were overturned on appeal in 1960. During the meeting, they secretly discussed the inner workings of La Cosa Nostra's drug smuggling and gambling interests in Cuba, as well as the international drug trade. This seemed to be a turning point for Santo Trafficante Jr.'s career. The shadow of suspicion loomed over Trafficante in January 1958, when Cuban police interrogated him about the Appalachian meeting. The police produced a comprehensive report that contained transcripts of long-distance calls made from the Sans Souci from August to December 1957. The report was eventually handed over to the district attorney's office, revealing a trail of illicit activities. On the same day, the Cuban Department of Investigation notified the Bureau of Narcotics that Trafficante was registered in their alien office under a unique number. The towering infernos of Havana's casinos and hotels were now nothing more than a memory. The revolutionary government of Fidel Castro had swept through the city like a hurricane, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The opulent world of Santo Trafficante Jr., once the king of Cuba's underworld, had crumbled into dust. Castro's regime had seized all of Trafficante's assets and declared him an undesirable alien, forcing him to flee the country. The man who had once rubbed shoulders with presidents and gangsters alike had lost his empire. Trafficante moved back to Tampa, and from his hidden hillside villa, he plotted his revenge. The cold streets of Chicago were unforgiving, but Sam Giancana knew how to survive. As a member of the 42 gang, he had learned to be a skilled getaway driver and a ruthless killer. But when Joseph Esposito, the leader of the gang, met his end, everything changed. The 42 gang became an extension of the Chicago outfit, and Sam Giancana was on the rise. He controlled everything from illegal gambling to political rackets in Louisiana. After serving time in prison, Giancana convinced the outfit to take over Chicago's African-American lottery system, and in 1957, he became the outfit's new boss, even though the true power still rested with Ricardo and Rica. It's widely believed that during Kennedy's presidency, Giancana and other gangsters were enlisted by the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, to assassinate the Cuban leader, Fidel Castro. This was partially confirmed during the Church Committee hearings in 1975, which investigated whether the U.S. government had attempted to assassinate foreign political leaders. The relationship between the U.S. and Cuba was strained after the fall of Fulgencio Batista. The Italian-American mafia had several lucrative casinos in Cuba under Batista's leadership. However, after Castro came to power in 1959, the mafia was pushed out of the country. In 1960, the CIA enlisted former FBI agent Robert Mayhew to contact Johnny Roselli, a mafioso from Chicago. Mayhew offered Roselli $150,000 to kill Castro, but he refused payment and introduced Mayhew to Santo Trafficante Jr. and Giancana instead. Trafficante was one of the mafia bosses who had a major stake in the Cuban casinos before Castro's arrival. During the same period, Giancana also enlisted Mayhew to bug the phone of his mistress, Phyllis McGuire. He suspected that McGuire, whom he had met through Frank Sinatra, was having an affair with comedian Dan Rowan. Although the plan was foiled when the agent was arrested, Robert Kennedy intervened to prevent Mayhew and the agent from being prosecuted at the request of the CIA. According to Giancana's daughter, McGuire was also having an affair with Kennedy at the time. The plan was foolproof, or so they thought. The CIA and military had been preparing for months for the Bay of Pigs invasion, an attempt to overthrow Fidel Castro and his communist regime in Cuba. But everything went wrong when President John F. Kennedy gave the order to stand down, leaving the anti-Castro forces vulnerable to attack. The invasion was a disaster, with many of the soldiers killed or captured. It was a turning point for the Kennedy administration, as the botched operation led to increased tensions with Cuba and the Soviet Union. It also marked a significant failure for the CIA and the military, who had put all their resources into the invasion. But little did they know, the real danger lay not in the Bay of Pigs, but in the shadows. As it later emerged, the CIA had been involved in several assassination attempts on Castro, including poisoned cigars, a scuba diving suit infected with tuberculosis, and a booby-trapped conch shell. But Kennedy's decision to call off the invasion may have unwittingly saved Castro's life and prevented the CIA from further escalating tensions with Cuba. The CIA's alleged plots to assassinate Fidel Castro were nothing short of James Bond-esque. According to reports, the agency hatched a variety of plans that included everything from poisoned cigars to a scuba diving suit infected with tuberculosis. In one plan, a booby-trapped conch was even placed on the sea bottom where Castro liked to dive. Even though Castro loved cigars and scuba diving, he quit smoking in 1985, perhaps out of fear that his beloved pastimes would be used against him. Despite all the attempts on his life, Castro lived to the ripe old age of 90, leaving many to wonder if any of the plots were ever truly serious. The air was thick with tension as the mob boss, Santo Trafficante, leaned in to whisper to his trusted informant, José Alemán. It was 1962, and the Kennedys' relentless attacks on organized crime had left him seething with anger. As he spoke, his words dripped with venom, and his eyes glinted with malice. "Kennedy is going to be hit," he hissed, his voice low and menacing. Alemán's heart skipped a beat as he listened to Trafficante's chilling words. He knew he had to act fast and report. Years passed, and the memory of that conversation slowly faded away. Until 1978, when both Trafficante and Alemán were called to testify before the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations. The committee was investigating possible links between Kennedy's assassination and anti-Castro Cubans, and Trafficante was determined to clear his name. He denied the allegation that he had ever said that Kennedy was going to be hit, and testified that he had worked with the CIA in the early 1960s on an attempt to poison Castro. But Alemán's words hung heavy in the air, and the truth remained elusive. It wasn't until 1992 that new evidence emerged. Trafficante's former attorney claimed that he had relayed a request from Jimmy Hoffa to Trafficante and New Orleans boss Carlos Marcello to have Kennedy killed. Trafficante vehemently denied the accusation and claimed that he only acted out of patriotism. But in his final moments, Trafficante made a stunning confession. He revealed that Marcello was actually meant to assassinate Robert F. Kennedy, the president's brother, instead of John F. Kennedy.